Well, welcome to another roundtable discussion here at the virtual concourse, the Concours Virtual. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Richard Charlesworth, and even if you haven't bumped into me at a classic event, you may have heard me over the PA as the Master of Ceremonies for the Quail, a motorsports gathering. I'm also curator and joint presenter of the Concours of Elegance at Hampton Court Palace and a presenter of the London Concours. I'm also an established concourse judge and reasonably well known for my association with Bentley, having worked for the company since 1974, most recently as the Director of Royal and VIP Relations, head of the Heritage Collection, and as brand ambassador until I retired in 2017. Now, Jamie Lincoln Kitman is a New York lawyer and rock band manager and a contributing editor to R&T, The Road Rat, and Airmail. Jamie is a winner of the National Magazine Award and was a long-time columnist for Car, Top Gear, and Automobile, as well as a contributor to the New York Times, The Guardian, The Nation, Vanity Fair, and others. He's the president of Octane Film Cars, which in partnership with Haggerty has supplied cars for film and TV, including The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, The Irishman, and The Americans. Peter Larson has co-authored a number of books with Ben Erickson on French cars and coach builders, and is now working on Joseph Fogoni, Le Grand Couturier de la Carrosserie Automobile. Peter's worked for many years in the entertainment industry, but is now involved in writing and judging at a number of international concours, including the Pebble Beach Concours d'Elegance, where he also serves on the selection committee, as well as Chantilly Art and Elegance Richard Mille in France, the 21 Gun Salute Concours d'Elegance in India, Salon Privé in England, and the Concours d'Elegance Suisse in Switzerland. In addition, Peter Larson is a member of ICJAG, the International Chief Judge Advisory Group. And Dave Kinney is a lifelong automobile enthusiast who's been able to blend his passion for all types and ages of cars into his vocation. The owner of US Appraisal, an automotive valuation firm, Dave is an accredited senior appraiser with the American Society of Appraisers. He also writes for the Haggerty Insider and for Octane. He's the publisher of the Haggerty Price Guide, which he founded in 2006 as Cars That Matter. He also serves on the board of the Rolls-Royce Foundation and the Macpherson College Advisory Board, and is an experienced concourse judge himself. And we all have to be very nice to him because Dave is the head judge of the Concours Virtual, so we have to be very polite. But gentlemen, you're very welcome.
Just make a donation to UNICEF, we'll be fine.
Oh, sorry, not to the usual place then we make the donation. To UNICEF
exactly.
This time. Well, thanks, guys. Now, we've got a couple of, we've got a number of interesting cars here. We've got, in the post-war Grand Tourers, there were so many entrants that, as people know, we had to split it into two. So we're going to talk now about the cars from 1946 to 1959. And in that class alone, there are 21 cars. So quite a few cars to cover. But Dave, I was going to start with you, boss, just to say, this class is Grand Tourers. What is a Grand Tourer? How do you describe to the man in the street, what's a Grand Tourer?
That's a tough one because I think it's more of a Concours class than a class of automobiles. But I would say it's something that a capable car that is quick and responsive and also comfortable with room for luggage. So it's maybe the expansion on a GT car of a car that is both capable and fun to drive, but also something that you'd take out not just for the afternoon, but maybe for the weekend.
Yeah, no, it's a good shout. I mean, it's interesting, as we've all seen with this selection of cars. I mean, some of them are, there's lots of room, there's lots of space, and you can imagine a very long, comfortable journey. Others are special cars, but, I'm not sure that we could all want to travel a long way. I mean, Peter, I was going to say to you, a number of these cars are Ferraris. Now, you're a well-known Ferrari aficionado, of course, but do you think that this is to be expected, that so many Ferraris have appeared here, or is it just that Ferrari owners want their cars to be seen by people?
Well, let me start by disagreeing a little bit with Dave. I think that a Grand Touring car is, if you traces its history back to what was the French Grande Routière, which were the fast, comfortable cars, the Bugatti Type 57s, the Delahaye's, the Talbot Lagos, the Delages that were used on the Route Nationale in France, which were the straight tree-lined roads where you could sort of take your Grande Routière and whip down to the Côte d'Azur from Paris. And I think that after the war, I think that the Italian term Gran Turismo, which is GT, and of course there were also GT Cortinas, but we'll let that one lie on the wayside, is a natural continuation of that. So for me, a Grand Touring car, it's not an out-and-out sports car because that is too harsh, that is too basic, that is too focused on cornering ability and those kinds of things. But it is a powerful machine that can cover long distance roads. And I will insert another thing which people may agree with. I don't think that a Grand Touring car can be a four-door. You know, for me, it is a two-door, it is a cabriolet, it is a convertible, or it is a coupe. Like a Maserati Ghibli, that is a Grand Touring car. And so, yes, Ferraris, absolutely, because we all know that Ferraris, of course, made all the racing cars and all of that, and yards of books have been written. But the exclusive road cars, the Grand Touring cars from Ferrari, is of course in the 50s what to a large extent paid for the racing activities.
I think, Jamie, you know, you've looked down the list of cars we've got here. There are some, in taking Peter's point, you're probably looking at a comfortable 2 to 4 seater, probably a two-door car if you take his interpretation. But some of these cars you could imagine sitting in and looking forward to 1,000-mile journeys. Some might be less appropriate. I mean, what catches your eye? Which of these is the one you would like to embark upon a journey?
I would agree that by Peter's definition, the Speedster and the double bubble Abarth, I think, have to go. You know, they're not in the right class, and it's too bad because
they're lovely cars.
You know, all of these seem worthy to me. I probably would have included Launch's Flaminia as well, which I think came out in 1957, and you know, moved the game on for them, and is one of my favorite cars. I'm also curious about, although I don't know that I have, probably defer to someone else for the, you know, a great suggestion, but you know, it wouldn't be untoward to have some American cars on this list. In, you know, in the days when they started calling American cars GTs in the 1960s, I don't think it was, you know, necessarily very accurate because, you know, they mostly were ill handling and not very well made. But I think there's a period that this class encompasses where there really were some, you know, significant American cars that could be Grand Touring cars. And of course, I guess you could include Cunningham in that list as well. But I'm thinking of mass market manufacturers, at least, you know, Cadillac.
And of course, you know, when you have a concourse, you get the cars that people enter. So this is not.
Yeah, well, that is the fact. As to these cars, I would say that just about any one of them would be great, and I don't have anything like a lot more detail to say at this point.
No, that's good. I will come back to which of the emissions as well in a minute, if I may. But Dave, you know, we've got some interesting contrasts in there. You've got some obvious characters you'd expect to see in this lineup, but then you've got the Tatra, the T87 Tatra in there, and even more interestingly, we could say, is the Gaz, the M20 Gaz. Now these, I can imagine, are they're going to threaten at Pebble Beach soon for the top slot. But I mean, it's interesting to have some, and whatever we think of them, and no doubt we'll hear what we think of them in a minute. But somebody spent a lot of money on these cars, restoring them to get them to the condition they're in, which is probably way better than they are when they were brand spanking new.
Well, let me go back again. So it's I can see this is going to be a really interesting class to judge. I can tell because we're with two other judges here, and you know, we can't even agree on the nomenclature, and that's just fine. I love this. I love the discussion. There's absolutely no doubt about it. Look, the GAZ. I mean, let's concentrate on that. You know, it's the best one I've seen in a long time, and it could be. The owner seems to think it's one of the best ones in the world, and I am not going to dispel that because I've never seen a better one. I think it's great that we have it open to so many cars in so many different classes that, you know, let's just say we had a lot of stuff fall into our classes here, and that's just fine. I believe, you know, Peter, you can correct me, but I believe the fitted luggage was appropriate for the Shadoni edition, guys.
Maybe it's the Louis Vuitton edition.
Well, I was looking, but it looked more like it was a natural material instead of vinyl. So you know, who the heck knows?
M is.
Yeah, there we go. It's the Hermes edition.
But if about the Tatra, just to jump a little bit, to me, like I said before, to me, it's not really a grand touring car, but it is technically, of course, and historically, an absolutely fascinating automobile. Hans Ledwinka built the T77 in the early 30s, and it had about, I think, 80 horsepower and a top speed of 100 miles an hour, and it was a large car. And so technically and aerodynamically, Tatras are fascinating with the rear-mounted air-cooled V8. They are stupendous cars. Is it the Grand Tourer in my book? Maybe I'm a bit too fundamentalist about the whole thing. Probably I am.
Yeah, well, it's certainly, no, I'm afraid it doesn't meet your description. Now, you would probably be extremely comfortable driving on a Grand Tour in that car, but it's not what you would normally consider to be a Grand Tourer, you're right.
And
without side wind, though, without too much side wind, because it's got the engine in the rear behind the rear axle. So, got to be careful.
You see, you could be a family of 5 with a chauffeur, just enjoying the scenery in your 6-seat motor car. But
you can't do that. You can't do that in the Abarth. There's no doubt about it. So
this is true. Or a much smaller family. Peter, you know, you're obviously something of a design guru. Now, there's some interesting examples of coach builders or carrossery here, including Touring and Vignale. They're very much of that period, aren't they? As you say, the Gran Turismo era. Well,
Touring, of course, they stretch back and were responsible for the most gorgeous Alfa Romeos prior to the Second World War. I would think that what happened, of course, is that after the war, the French coach builders really had a very hard time finding their feet. And there were political reasons for that, economic reasons for that, lots of reasons for that. And the baton, as far as making unique one-off cars by hand, was, of course, taken over by Italy. And these are the cars that we celebrate all over the world because some of the most gorgeous and beautiful creations. I would say that along with Pininfarina, you have Ghia, you have Bertone. But in Italy, there is a big difference. There were a few coach builders that industrialized themselves and were able to make cars in series. Pininfarina was one of them, Bertone was another, and Ghia was a third. And then you had other coach builders that remained artisanal, such as Vignale, because Vignale never went into a big series production of cars. Giovanni Michelotti designed almost all the Vignale cars, and a lot of them were one-offs. So it's two different sides. Touring continued to make one-off cars. I think that we all agree that they had the Alphas after the war, but it was Bertone and Ghia and I forget the third one that really Pininfarina, that really industrialized themselves.
Yeah, and we've got a good selection here. But Jamie, just to come back to your point you were making, that you were thinking there's some emissions here. And you were saying that, you know, it would be nice to see some American cars perhaps on there. But I can think of some American cars of the period where, again, you'd be extremely comfortable on your 1,000-mile journey. But is there anything that fits the Larson bracket of a two-door, 2 to 4 seat Grand Tourer, do you think?
Well, I think, you know, some of them might be really capable of holding 6 people, but would be more comfortable with 4. But I do think, yeah, I think that, you know, some late 40s Cadillac coupes and the Chrysler.
1953 Studebaker coupe would be a perfect example.
That was the other one that I was thinking of, the Studebaker.
The Lowy coupe.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Those are
you can think of individual cars, perhaps the coach built.
Being American, they were you know, mostly understressed and designed to go long distances at you know, fairly high speeds, I think. And they were pleasant, you know, machines to be in as well, with a lot of you know, fairly sophisticated design references and origins. And also, you know, I mean, the Bentley Continental is, you know, it apes a Cadillac of a few years earlier. You can argue that it's even prettier. I think I would, but you know, GM's styling at that point was extremely forward, I think.
I agree.
Yeah.
I'm reading right now the biography that recently came out about Dick Seaman, the racing driver. And when he participated in the Vanderbilt Cup, he was in America, and he tried driving American cars on American roads for the first time. And that was a revelation to him, because he said that whereas they don't work very well necessarily in Europe, but when you have these motorways and these long straights and a softly sprung American car is the perfect fit.
Yeah. Horses for courses, as they say. Now, gentlemen, I think it'd be interesting to look at some of the cars we've got entered. We've got 21 cars in this class. This one, and this is, again, personally, I quite like to look at this because I like the rear spats on the car there, which I think adds to it. And Jamie, I think it's a pretty good looking car. I'm not sure that
yeah, they're beautiful.
Wherever the inspiration may have come from, I think that's a pretty good looking car.
Yeah, the interesting thing for me is I'm of the age that I'm happy to tell everyone that within earshot that I hated the look of the Bentley Continental when I was a teenager and when I was in my 20s. And in my 30s, I reevaluated the looks, and now it's actually one of my favorite cars in terms of just, you know, for its era and everything else. I think that it's a very much forward-looking car, and also the definition of a car you'd want to drive on the continent, thus the name. So, you know, a beautiful, beautiful car, and I like the cars with the spats better.
Was it most certainly a Grand Tour?
Yeah. To your point, Peter and Dave, you're right. This was a car. I mean, obviously, I'm a Bentley boy, so I'm going to be a bit biased. But this was a car, as you know, in period when the prototype came out in '52. This was a car that would do 120 miles per hour. You could cruise down, 4 of you with luggage, cruise down at 100 miles an hour, at a time where, you know, most family cars, if there was such a thing at the time, would be lucky to do 40 miles an hour. So it was a Grand Tour, and as you say, named because it was seen to be capable of driving not just from Paris to the Côte d'Azur, Peter, but from London to the Côte d'Azur. And
yeah, I can see that.
The 208 of these, the list of owners was like a who's who of the time. But this, to a non-Ferrari guy, is a very, very non-Ferrari looking Ferrari. But it is an astonishing looking thing.
It's a lovely early 50s Ferrari, and this is Vignale, unless I'm mistaken, isn't it? Yes, it is.
It is.
Yes. Yeah. So it's a Michelotti design, and a beautiful Grand Touring car.
I like everything about this car, but its grille. I think the grille is way too Americanized.
But that's it about Michelotti. He copied a lot of American cars. When you see his designs, the Maserati 5000 GT by Alemanno, it's got 3 tail lights on each side, and when you look at it, you can see that he copied the '58 Chevrolet Impala.
Oh, sure.
So,
No, absolutely. I love everything about this car except for the grille, but that doesn't disqualify it or mean that I'm right. I've been wrong before. As a matter of fact, when I left the house, my wife reminded me I was wrong about something. So how unusual is that, right, guys? So anyhow, long story short, it's personal preference, and I'd be real happy to see this in the in the winner's circle anyway. I think it's a stunning design. I love the door handles on Vignale cars. I love the tail lights. I love everything about the car, but the grille to me looks a little forced in an era where an egg crate was, pardon me, the one that you would expect. But that's a good reason to think of this as a little bit different, and I agree with that as well.
I would accept it in my garage and live with the grill.
I think I would do the same. Thank you. Yeah.
Well,
all right.
In support, Dave. I mean, you said exactly what I thought. It's a great looking car. I just think the, as you say, the grille stands out a little bit, should we say? But
there you go.
But it's again, as we said earlier, it's in the
then go to the 1953 Europa by Vignale. That's Michelotti going totally overboard on chrome and
this is astonishing. Yeah, if we look at the there's a lot of chrome on there.
Yeah, I remember I saw it at the Concours Swiss, and I thought it's the only Ferrari I've ever seen that has a bra.
Yes. Yeah, well, no, I won't say what I was thinking. I'll get in trouble. But yeah, it is a pretty astonishing, I mean, this interesting sandwich, like the sandwich two-tone split. But it is
But it's very typical Michelotti of the period.
Yeah, I mean, minimalist inside there, isn't it? It's astonishing. You've seen this.
It's certainly a Grand Touring car.
Yeah, and you saw this in the flesh. You said.
Pardon?
Yes. It's a beautiful combination of way over the top and understated at the same time, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So you have the understated interior, you have the over the top exterior, and that's the way it was designed when new. I mean, here are the black and white pictures showing it in period.
That's it.
And it's a fascinating design and a fascinating car.
It is astonishing, and this is what we like. When you're looking at a class like this, you want variety, don't you? You want something that's, in some cases it will delight you, in others it won't. I mean, here's one that this is an unlikely contender for this, but this is almost a mass-produced car. But this particular example, I thought was stunning.
Yeah, what a beautiful shot of the dash.
That's an English interior, that is, isn't it? Hey?
Yeah.
Well, William Lyons sure knew his style.
Yeah, amazing.
Says Peter, damning with faint praise.
No, it's actually very interesting. There exists, this will be in the book, of course, but there exists a correspondence where William Lyons tried to get Joseph Figoni to design bodies for SS cars before the war, and Figoni wanted a pile of money and Lyons was not willing to pay, so that never happened. But
really,
I think yes, but he certainly knew style very well.
Now, Richard, since you're the only Brit, why don't you comment on the white walls on the Jaguar?
Well, yeah, funny, they did catch my eye. But this is a car that's been restored in America. It lives in America, I believe, and
was in this particular one built for the American market. So
yeah, so again, you built, as an ex-Bentley and Rolls-Royce guy, you build for your customer, and
exactly.
You get a colour scheme that in the leafy lanes of Crewe in Cheshire might look dreadful, but put it into Dubai, California, Shanghai, it looks fantastic. So it's it's got to meet the customer's requirements. The customer's always right. But no, the white walls were interesting, but it works with the car, doesn't it? In this particular case,
especially with the white on the body of the car, it certainly works.
I think that's a great shape too. I really do.
It is.
they've all aged really well, and I like Dave's memory of the Bentley. They seemed when I was a kid, a lot of stuff seemed sort of fusty in a way that they really don't now. Now I just think it looks awesome.
Is fusty a combination of crusty and fussy all at the same time? I love that word.
Something like that. I'd have to look it up.
I'll just put this up. You know, you see a few of these around, but this to me is where the backstory and the ownership makes the car. And because this was a Caracciolo car, you know, who is somebody I've always admired when I've known about the history of his racing career and probably how he survived in pre-war Germany as well, being such a hero. But, you know, this is where a car, whether you hugely like the car or not, because it was Rudolf Caracciolo's car, that makes it a great car for me. And so sometimes, I'm sure you'd agree, Dave, the backstory is an important part of your consideration for the car.
Absolutely, 100%. And this car does have a great backstory. The color combination really, to me, works on this car, but I could see that being argued all day long. The fire engine red on the crema, the cream white color. Yeah. I could see that some people would absolutely not like it. That's the way it was ordered, apparently. That's the way it was delivered.
Yeah,
and
that's
so
it.
We celebrate that.
I brought this up just to show, delivered in ivory with dark red leather interior coat, flared fire red hardtop. That was its factory spec, black soft top underneath. But the fact this was used by Caracciolo as a company demonstrator, effectively. He used the car extensively for demonstration during his work as brand ambassador, showing it to members of British and NATO troops.
Could we just take a short look at the DB1?
Yeah.
Which is a really rare and beautiful car.
No, I agree, Peter. It's such an important car, this, isn't it?
They only built like 15 or something.
Yeah, and this is, well, I mean, this. I'll have to read the blurb, but I think this is, as you say, one of the very first cars.
It's beautiful.
There you go. One of only 15 made, possibly 9 left. Only one previous owner since new. Same time of 50 years. The first car produced. So it's got an interesting history, but
I think it's very cool, this car.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? It's sorry, just go back. I think the look of the front of it, you know, how that shape changed over the years very quickly, but wasn't this quite distinctive in its time? You know, I mean, not sure how beautiful it was. I think that later ones got better looking, but it's so different.
I hate to say it, it's almost French.
But only almost.
It's, that period of design for me, a lot of English sports cars of that era that just don't look right, and they didn't look right to me when I was a kid, and they still don't look right. You know, I mean, I admire it in a lot of ways, but not as a enduring design.
Lots of curves.
It does, and yet there's so many cars like the Lee Francis and the even the Jowett Jupiter.
Yeah.
That is not a pretty car.
Yeah.
But again, you know, variety being the spice of life. I mean, we were talking about mentioned this earlier, that probably this is never going to be a Grand Tourer, because you're not going to get the family in this, are you, to take them on a Grand Tour? But what
you're not going to get me. You're not going to get me in that. That's
well.
And even if you did, it wouldn't be grand.
Yeah,
no, it would not.
But Dave, to your point, this is a picture of the car at the London Concours last year. You see the Beast of Turin standing behind it there. So a bit of a contrast. But to your very point, the chap who owned this car, and it was a class winner at the London Concours, he must have been 6'3", 6'4", and he just somehow folded himself in and out of it, and then he loved driving it long distances.
I'm very glad that Gumby owned the car, and I think that's wonderful. However,
maybe
as a gentleman of size, I can admire it only from a distance, and I do admire it, and I've always loved the double bubble, And I like the backstory on this car. If you scroll down, you'll see this car when it was found. I guess from what I read briefly, I think it was found in Australia. It was basically a bare shell sitting next to a couple of fossil Vegas.
Yeah.
You know, if you look at the photo. So congratulations to the person who had had to put this car back together. There it is, right there, a U.S. import car. But can you imagine? Going
there's
from
an
that,
excellence behind it.
exactly, and an HK 500 as well, right?
You should test the bubbles if the owner really was 6'4", to make sure that they're regulation height.
The gurney bubble before there was a gurney bubble, right?
Yeah.
But
There's just one final car which is not really a Grand Tourer, but which I've always loved, and that's the Seata. I think that's a beautiful car.
Where are we? Let's just have a look. Here we go.
But it's not really a Grand Tourer because it's an out-and-out sports car to me.
It is lovely, yeah. And in fact, I remember that's Emilia Island. I remember seeing it there. Car. It is, Peter. You're right. It's a lovely looking car.
I think they're just beautiful, but it is not a Grand Tourer to me. To me, it is a sports car.
Yeah, but yeah, opulent inside, but a small two-seater cockpit, as you say. But you know, as we say, that's loved by its owner, and isn't it good to see so many of these cars have had so much attention? Look at that; it didn't look too good at some stage. So I think it needed a bit more than a polish to get it out. But just to say, I think that, you know, we all agree we have an eclectic mix here, don't we? We've got some interesting choices for you judges to make when it comes to the final showdown and hoedown. And as you said, Dave, first of all, you need to decide what a Grand Tourer is, and therefore what your shortlist looks like. But I think you've got some great cars there, and I think all of us would love to spend a long drive in any of these cars. Some more than others maybe, but I think it's going to be an interesting choice. So can I say thank you very much for your time on this talk. I hope you don't have too much of a struggle with the judging. And as ever, as you were seeing with previous classes that have been announced, as you know, we have the judges' choices and we have the people's choice. And it's been interesting to see that in some cases the two are quite close, in other cases they're completely miles apart. So that adds to the fascination of it.